This is the fresh perspective. What you're about to hear is not an explanation, it's a reflection. There's no rush, just listen, and let it meet you where you are. Sometimes, understanding doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives quietly, like a deep breath you didn't know you were holding. What I'm about to share began with a dream, but it didn't stay there. It followed me into waking life. I woke up from this dream, and all I wanted to do was shout. Not from fear, but from joy. It felt like an answer to questions I'd carried for years. As I lay there, the feeling still fresh, I didn't just think of myself. I thought of people I see every day. The quiet hunger in their eyes, not just for food, but for meaning. I thought of people endlessly searching for answers, reading books, watching videos, trying one method after another, hoping, praying, that this one would finally make life make sense. Sometimes I see the pain in people's faces when they want one thing with all their heart, and life seems to hand them something entirely different. It can make a person feel small, almost invisible, like a leaf caught in tides far bigger than them. Then my thoughts turned closer to home. I thought of my cousin, struggling to make ends meet, trying again and again, doing his best. I remembered my late uncle, a man who longed for a better life, who hoped, who waited, but never quite touched it. And I thought of myself, my own endless wondering about what truly makes life livable, about the unseen laws that seem to shape outcomes whether we understand them or not. Inside me, a quiet urgency grew. I knew what I had seen mattered. I also knew how easy it would be to miss. Not because it was complicated, but because we've spent our lives accepting certain laws as final. What I had just discovered quietly overturned all of that. And I worried, what if I can't explain it well enough? I remember whispering to myself, don't rush, slow down, he may understand, just keep going, try. Then it hit me, yes, I've got it. I wanted to call my cousin immediately, to tell him everything, to explain it step by step, but it was still too early to call. So I sat up in bed and did what I always do. I recorded the dream. Because when you write your dreams down, not once but regularly, something subtle begins to happen. Over time, you start to notice a pattern. It's as if life is speaking in a quiet language, a kind of code. And that language is often personal. It changes as you change. What a dream means today may not be what it means a year from now. But when you return to it, when you stay with it, its meaning becomes clearer. As I stared at the ceiling, one thought stopped me cold. How do you explain a truth so simple that it sounds unbelievable? What if the prison we live in is one we cannot see? By morning, I knew I could not keep this to myself. By 7 a.m., I called my cousin and asked him to come over. He arrived about 35 minutes later. I barely greeted him. I rushed him inside, sat him down, and said, if you truly understand what I'm about to say, it will put an end to many things. Even as I spoke, I felt the weight of it, that responsibility, because knowing something is not the same as explaining it. Truth, spoken too quickly, can sound foolish. Inside, I reminded myself again, slow down, start where understanding can grow. I picked up a marker and walked to my teaching board. The sound of the marker touching the surface felt loud in the room. I drew slowly, a square. Something so simple it almost felt insulting. My cousin stared at it. A square? He asked. I ignored the question, because sometimes simplicity is not the answer, it's the doorway. Imagine, I said, a world with only 2 dimensions, length, breadth, no height. In that world, that's all reality can ever be. No above, no below, no depth. I paused to let him picture it. All you would ever know, I said, is length and breadth. He thought for a moment, then said, like a shadow. I smiled. Yes, just like a shadow. Now imagine, I continued, the most fortified prison in that world. Walls so tight they cannot be broken, no gaps, no exits. In that two-dimensional world, escape would be impossible. A prisoner could live there and die there, never knowing freedom existed. I let that sit. Then I asked him, "How would you escape?" He was silent. There was no answer, not in that world. "Now imagine," I said softly, "someone who understands and can conceive three dimensions: length, breadth, height. To that person," I continued, "freeing the prisoner would be easy." He frowned. "How?" he asked. For a moment, I felt the familiar fear again. What if this is where it falls apart? Then I said one word: height. He blinked. "If you can see height," I said, "you can see an opening they cannot even conceive. You simply lift the prisoner." I paused. In a two-dimensional world, there's no idea of rooftops, no idea of ceilings. But from above, I looked at him. The prison is open. My cousin sat up. I could see something changing in his face. Then I asked him the question that changed everything. "Now imagine our world: length, breadth, height. Do you think the greatest prisons of this world, poverty, fear, limitation, circumstance, are impenetrable to someone who sees from a higher dimension?" He answered quietly, "No, exactly. Because such a being would see openings we cannot even imagine." I stepped back from the board, and I said, "This is not about physics." I let that land. "This is about life. If this is true for dimensions," I said, "what does it mean for the struggles we call permanent?" He looked at me, and I knew this conversation was only beginning. If this reflection spoke to you, you might want to sit with it a little longer. You can continue with the next part whenever you're ready. This is The Fresh Perspective. Thank you for listening.